In a crowded cafe, a wealthy young man decided to humiliate a waitress. He thought money made him untouchable. What he didn't know was that someone powerful was watching. The cafe was known for its elegance, soft music, expensive decor, and wealthy customers who believed this place belonged to them. For the staff, respect was expected. For him, respect was optional. The young man wore a tailored suit and a careless smile. He came from money, old money, and he carried himself like the rules didn't apply to him. The waitress had been on her feet since early morning. Quiet, polite, invisible to most of the room, she approached his table with a gentle smile, unaware her day was about to change. He complained, loudly, mocking her accent, questioning her intelligence, making sure everyone nearby could hear. The cafe fell quiet. Forks paused midair, eyes lowered. No one stepped in. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply apologized and turned to leave. That's when someone noticed him. A man sitting alone near the window. Quiet, watching everything. He wasn't impressed by money. He wasn't intimidated by arrogance. And unlike the others, he remembered faces. As a young man laughed, the observer stood up. Slowly, deliberately. The manager's face changed instantly. Respect, fear, recognition. The young man's name was mentioned. His family business. A contract. A decision, now reconsidered. For the first time that day, he felt small and walked toward the counter. No shouting, no insults, just consequences. Money can buy comfort. It can buy silence. But it can never buy immunity. Karma doesn't need permission. This is karma uncovered, where the truth always finds its way back. The waitress stopped near the counter. She sensed something had shifted behind her. Whispers spread across the room. Curiosity replaced silence. The man's voice was calm, measured, but every word carried weight. He said one name, and the room reacted. The laughter stopped. His confidence cracked. Pride told him to stay arrogant. Fear told him he'd made a mistake. The waitress was quietly asked to return. Her hand trembled. For the first time, someone asked her what happened. She spoke softly. No exaggeration, just facts. The young man didn't deny it. He couldn't. The observer nodded. That was enough. One phone call was made. Quietly. Power doesn't shout. It moves silently. She was told to take the rest of the day off. Paid. Before leaving, the man thanked her. Genuinely. Now everyone was watching him. There was no applause. Just judgment. He tried to laugh it off. It didn't work. The bill arrived. With an extra charge. The observer met his eyes one last time. Be careful how you treat people. Then he left, as quietly as he came. The cafe slowly returned to normal. But something had changed. The young man sat alone, surrounded, yet isolated. Not money, not status, but respect. Outside, the waitress breathed deeply. Free. It was a small moment. But lessons don't need size. Karma is patient. It remembers names, faces, moments. No one is untouchable. Justice doesn't always arrive loud, but it always arrives. How you treat others is a choice. So are the consequences. This is karma uncovered, where the truth always finds its way back. After the observer left the cafe, the young man remained seated longer than expected, surrounded by noise yet trapped in silence, feeling for the first time that money had failed to shield him, that privilege had limits, and that respect, once lost, did not return on command. The room resumed its rhythm. Conversations restarted. Cups clinked, but every glance toward him carried judgment instead of admiration. And when he finally stood and paid the bill, his confident posture felt rehearsed rather than real, because humiliation lingers long after laughter fades. That night, the waitress returned home exhausted yet lighter, replaying not the insults but the moment someone listened, someone intervened, someone proved she mattered, and for the first time in years she slept peacefully. The next morning, in a tower of glass and marble, the young man sensed a shift as whispers replaced smiles and meetings were postponed without explanation, until his father, calm, composed, and unmistakably disappointed, asked what had happened, revealing that a single public moment had placed million-dollar contracts under review, not for financial reasons but for behavior. reminding him that reputation is precise and unforgiving. Meanwhile, the cafe itself transformed as staff stood taller. Managers listened more closely, and respect quietly took root. And when the waitress returned to work, she wasn't celebrated or promoted, just treated with dignity, which was justice enough. Days passed, weeks followed, and the young man learned restraint, aware now that unseen eyes exist everywhere, that power observes silently, and that arrogance leaves traces. When he later passed the cafe, he slowed but did not enter, understanding that some doors close not to punish but to remind, while elsewhere the observer sat alone in another cafe, uninterested in recognition, believing only in balance, knowing karma never rushes, never shouts, but always arrives, because humiliation echoes, silence enables, power without empathy collapses, and how you treat people when you think no one is watching is ultimately the truth that follows you forever. Weeks turned into months, and the young man's life slowly shifted. Small changes at first, almost imperceptible, like the way he listened before speaking, the way he paused before interrupting, the way he noticed the faces of those around him, realizing that influence isn't measured in wealth but in the respect you earn, and that every careless word leaves a mark. He found himself returning occasionally to the cafe, never as a customer seeking indulgence, but as a man observing quietly, reflecting on how the observer had reminded him that power is not freedom, that arrogance invites consequences, and that even the smallest acts of cruelty ripple far beyond the moment. The waitress continued her life too, carrying herself with a newfound confidence, serving tables with poise, no longer invisible, no longer defined by the disrespect of one man, yet never forgetting that day when justice had arrived quietly but decisively, when karma had spoken without a voice, and when she understood that patience, dignity, and truth can shift the balance in ways money never will. Elsewhere, the observer continued his silent vigilance, never interfering without purpose, knowing that some lessons must unfold in their own time, and that the world is shaped not by loud declarations or displays of force, but by the invisible threads of accountability, memory, and conscience. The young man learned slowly, painfully even, that each encounter left an imprint, that every choice carried weight, and that redemption is not a grand gesture but a quiet, daily practice of humility and respect. And so life moved forward, the cafe humming with ordinary chatter, customers laughing, staff moving efficiently. Yet beneath the surface, a subtle transformation had occurred, proving that even in the grandest towers of wealth, the simplest truth remains. No one is untouchable, and how you treat others writes the story you cannot erase. Because karma doesn't rush, doesn't announce itself, and doesn't forgive indifference. It remembers, watches, and acts with perfect timing.